Hey everybody, it's Anthony from ComicsEatingUp.net. I'm joined tonight by Blind Adam, the comic pimp. We're just doing a little riff session here tonight. We felt like being a little bit uplifting, talking about what's going on, and talk about some comic books in general like that. Adam, how's it going on your end?
To quote the great philosophers, the Smashing Pumpkins, I feel like a rat trapped in a cage.
I know the feeling. You're on day 14, I think, of the quarantine.
Actually, it's officially 15.
Wow. I had a good solid week going, and then I got called in to work for a couple of days. I work for social services during the day. I had to go pick up a work laptop. I had been on administrative leave for a couple of days, and actually some sick leave as well. And then, they called me in. So my 14-day quarantine starts all over. Not that I've been exposed to the coronavirus or anything, but just to make myself feel better, I'm keeping my ass down in the basement for a couple of days just to, make sure that I've not been exposed to anybody who had it. So just, it's crazy, man.
You're gonna live in the comic room for a couple days?
Yeah. I'm down in the comic room right now. You can see some of the stuff behind me. Well, you can't because we're on the phone, but, I'm down in the comic room. I've been organizing. I've been straightening, rebagging, and boarding. I've run through.
Yeah, I started to watch that video on the site. I haven't had a chance yet.
I ran through 1,000 bags and boards, rebagging and boarding stuff.
That whole 1,000 already? Holy crap!
Yeah, man. I've got probably 40,000 comic books, and I've been feeding in comic books from storage. I've had a ton of stuff in storage. And, man, it's just, I've got long boxes sitting over here that still need to be gone through. I pulled all my Invincible Iron Mans out, the old issues. Been pulling out a lot of cool stuff. And so the other night, that's what I did. I was talking about things to do during the comic apocalypse that we're going through.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And, hey, man, it's a great time to organize your comic books. Sadly, I've gone through a bit of, not depression, but it's hard to be inside for a week. It's a lack of motivation. I wanted to list and sell more stuff. Over here I have a big stack of stuff that's like duplicates and other stuff that I've been meaning to sell. Man, I just haven't had the motivation to list them yet.
No, I hear you, man. On my side, everyone knows I do creator interviews, which I throw in the comments section. On time or stuff like that. I just haven't had the energy to reach out to everyone.
Yeah, and it's tough.
My suggestion is, hey, man, if you can, sit outside for an hour. It really helps a great deal. I've
been doing that. We've been going out in the backyard. It doesn't look like it, but I'm a pretty good b-ball player. I've been playing some basketball with my son. We've got a hoop in the driveway, and we're going out and shooting for a half an hour a couple of times a day just to get some shots in. He plays on the travel basketball team. He plays on the travel baseball team that I coach as well. So he's really athletic. So for a kid like him to stay indoors like this, man, he's going nuts. So,
yeah, they're not having any more fights to the death, are they?
So I've got two kids, different ages, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. They are pretty good most of the time. But, sometimes they do come down and have that big blowout battle that, I have to step in and drop the hammer on them, so.
Yeah, no, the other day when we were talking, you're just like, stop it!
Yeah. And
I'm trying to be, go out and like, come on, let them go for 1 minute.
Well, they always tend to do it while I'm on the phone with somebody, so that makes it difficult for me.
Like I said, if I ever have two kids, it's gonna be, okay, you guys want to fight? Put the blindfolds on so you're equal. Here's the gloves.
My dad was a fight to the death kind of guy. He would just let us battle it out, and they're going to solve the problem themselves one way or another, and someone always ended up hurt. So, but let's go ahead and jump right into it, Adam. So something happened this week that we've never ever seen before.
This is weird. In our lifetime, Diamond shut down.
That's right. Diamond shut down. And we don't know how long they're going to be shut down for.
It's between no new movies coming out on a Friday and no new comics on a Wednesday. TV shut down indefinitely for new episodes.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in the MS-ing twice. I'm actually going to respect the family-friendly stuff. Hey, Poyle, how you doing? You know, but you know, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone.
I feel like I'm in the Stand. I don't know if anybody has had dreams of Colorado or Las Vegas. I mean, you know, people dream of Vegas, but if you've been dreaming of either Colorado or Las Vegas, this could be coming true. What's that?
Look at you talking to dreams of Vegas.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's normal for you, but if you started dreaming of Colorado and, you know, going out to this cabin and then, you know, we might be in the Stand. I mean, that's what it feels like, though. It really is a scary time. It's very almost apocalyptic. Everything that we've been taught as nerds and all, you know, comic books and movies and everything. This feels like it, you know?
This is like every bad comic book, every horrible science fiction movie, every Alex Jones prediction I've ever, you know, saw or read about is like coming true right now.
Well, the biggest hit, of course, to what we do as resellers or sellers or, you know, it's the fact that no new product is coming out. So, I mean, I've been writing about new products for 7 years. I just had my 7th anniversary for comicseatingup.net the other day.
We've been around for 7 years now?
Yeah, it's 7 years. Well, it's been 7 years in its current form. You know, I kind of did it anonymously and just kind of on message boards and stuff like that before, and then I launched the WordPress site, and then it became comicseatingup.net. So it's for 7 years it's been comicseatingup.net, and it's 7 years. But in all that time, nothing's ever happened so catastrophic that it shut Diamond down. And so
when I heard the news, you know, I was looking into opening up an account with Diamond. There's something I really don't want to talk about on here quite yet, because thanks to current events, I'm not able to cross I's and dot T's yet.
Yeah. Well,
you know, so, you know, when I got that news, I was like, well, I guess there goes that idea.
For now. Because, I mean, and I don't know if you saw Chuck from Mile High Comics blog post that he did.
Permission to go off for a minute?
Yeah, hold that thought hold that thought for 1 second. Let me just explain, in case anybody has not seen this post. Chuck, the owner of Mile High Comics, had put out a blog post saying, this is the end of print comics as we know it. So, Adam, go ahead. Let me hear what you think.
He is a old man. You ever see anyone who knows me knows I like the movie Old Yeller? It's time to put Chuck out behind the shed and pull the trigger.
Now, see, I think that's a little much. But, so, Chuck has taken a strategy that a lot of retailers have taken. Like Jesse James Comics, for example. Jesse James doesn't deal with Diamond at all. So this doesn't affect his business in the fact that he still has inventory to sell. He buys collections. He sells old books. His comic book shopping network on Facebook, he's active all the time. He's constantly selling comics. Now, Chuck has said that he's moved from primarily selling new comics to selling more back issues. And we know the guy has like 1 million back issues.
I actually do want to shop at that thing. You know, I hear it's like the size of the New York City Blockage warehouse.
It's pretty incredible. I haven't been myself, but I've seen videos inside. That Kevin Smith video, it's incredible. It's huge, and he's got millions of comics. It's got to be one of those things that, you know, unless you're organized and have a list, you're not going to find the things you're looking for because there's just so much volume. Recently,
the only reason like I said, he's one of the websites I go to quite often because he does have a lot of insight, and he's been in the industry for 40 years. I have nothing but respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's not at the Brian Hibbs level. Brian Hibbs owns Comics Experience, which if this was Demon Seed Radio, I'd give my real thoughts.
So Brian Hibbs was the guy who was on Bleeding Cool who said, correct me if I'm wrong, he's the one who said that he won't take money from speculators or flippers.
Yep. So, and he's the one he said if you had he wouldn't sell you a copy of Hell Arisen 3 if you didn't buy 1s and 2, because,
yeah.
you know, He's a total.
Well,
you can edit that out.
So I'll beep it. One of the things that I will say is he's very short-sighted because as I look around the room around me, I have a wall of pops. Actually, let me do this. Let me turn the.
Yeah, because I don't have the ability to do it, and you probably have more pops than I do.
Oh, dude. So I've got floor-to-ceiling wall of pops over here. I have pops over there, and then there's short boxes all around. Oh, there's a Capri Sun my kids left. I've got short boxes all around. I've got toys. All of my comics are bagged and boarded.
How much for Capri Sun?
What's that?
How much for that Capri Sun?
It costs exactly 2 rolls of toilet paper in the current economy.
That's not a fair trade, dude.
I know. I'll take what I can get. 1 roll, 4 squares, whatever you got to spare.
You get 3 squares and a granola bar.
There you go. Hey, that's the apocalyptic travel kit. But I mean, he's being really short-sighted in that, and the fact that he's saying that, hey, I don't want I'm for the true collectors. Well, dude, I've got 40,000 comics.
What is a true collector nowadays?
Well, and that's a good question because I am a collector, but I'm also a speculator and also a flipper.
I'm someone. This is how I make my money. And this is how I put food on my table and clothing on my back, and it just that type of statement just pisses me off. Because at the heart, I'm a collector.
Yeah. Well, and I think we all are, in a sense. But even with the volume of books that I buy, so just recently one of the local comic shops owners passed away, and he has 100,000 comics. Easily 100,000 comics. Upstairs, plus a basement full of comics. And his son's just selling everything for 50 cents a piece. And I've been going in up until about 3 weeks ago when I started kind of backing off because I wanted to conserve money just in case things went the way that it has.
Yeah, I hear you.
But, I was buying in bulk from him, and great stuff. I mean, he didn't care. He's like, I just want to move it. I just want to be able to cash out. He had to.
And you told me some of the stuff you were getting from that guy, and I was just like,
great stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great stuff. But, I needed to this stuff is 20, 30, 40 years old in bags that are probably just as old. I needed bags and boards. So as a store saying, hey, I don't want your money, you're a flipper, would he turn down the fact that I just bought 1,000 bags and boards recently? And I bought 10 short boxes that I had to, shuffle stuff in. He just kind of turned me off towards, hey, man, I mean, you're not going to sell me a comic. I get it. And I get him saying, if you didn't buy 1 or 2, I'm not selling you 3 because all you want to do is flip it. But if I was a regular in the store and I came in and said, hey, I heard this is getting hot, I want one for myself, and he said no, well, that would turn me off towards his store.
To me, this is my thing. Hey, maybe I heard about, because of Hell Risen 3 being so hot. I didn't know about it until issue 3. Then what?
Yeah.
Everyone's comic, depending on how hot it is, how cold it is, whatever the hell, it could be someone's thirst comic.
It could be, very well.
You get someone away? You know what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just say, hey, man, I'm not going to say what Larry did, or how he did it, but Larry Doherty, who is a very polarizing figure in our industry, helped me out with Batman 89s.
See, now, I like Larry a lot. I've known him for years, and I know the controversy behind him and the things that he said. And that's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses for anything that was said in the past. But Larry has always been very good to me. He's always been very funny. He's been very nice. He's been very supportive of the site. He's a retailer who I do like, and that's cool.
Larry's awesome. People have to realize that he's built up a persona. And if there's anyone who embodies the comic book guy from The Simpsons in real life, it's Larry.
Yeah. He doesn't have the physique.
We're texting back and forth. I accidentally sent him an audio text because he wanted information from me. Sometimes that's easier for me.
Yeah.
Gets me this text. He's like, never send me one of those audio texts again. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not going to get what I just paid for.
Nah.
And then he's just like, send me your address. But you have someone who can help you. Give me your address.
Yeah. Now, like I said, I've never had any problems from him. I think I think he's a decent guy. I think that he allows the persona to take over. And there's a lot of people in the comic book industry like that. I mean, they just genuinely, let their personalities take over.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm guilty of it myself.
So with the shutdown of Diamond, though, have you heard of shops starting to close down?
Let's see, I heard that these comics out in California closed indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
I heard nothing in the New Jersey, New York area yet. I heard of Leasington. I heard of some store out in England doing it.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of many yet, have you?
There's one in Virginia that they just shuttered their doors. They're like, that's it, we're done. Now, the big problem with Diamond shutting down is that a lot of comic shops live week to week. So they're month to month in some cases, but week to week. But the lack of income is killing them. Now, I shop at Third Eye Comics. They're my local comic shop. It's a huge shop. I mean, toys, games. They have 2 separate stores here in the Annapolis area. And I don't know how they're going to float that rent to begin with. So they're doing what's called battle bonds, where you can buy a gift certificate. Let's say it's a $100 battle bond, and that gets you a $50 gift card plus a VIP experience to one of their signings. They do signings all the time. They do as many signings as Midtown does. And they go up to $5,000. I'm like, this is a fantastic idea. Helping keep stores afloat any way you can. So what I did was, I like I said, I've been kind of in exile for the past 2 weeks, so I haven't picked up my comics, but I've been on the phone with them. I usually go into the shop Tuesday night and pick up books for my box. I pick up books that I think are 9.8 quality, bag and board them. They hold them for me. I go pick up the books usually Wednesday, but I haven't been in 2 weeks. So I called them up today and I said, hey, let's do this. Let's get my box paid for because I want to keep supporting you. And I also said, because they have a warehouse full of old comics they haven't gone through yet, I say, any keys that you get, email me, because I'm a buyer of key comics, not only to sell, but as a collector. So they've got me on their list, as they're going through, because they're just trying to keep busy. Now, they're completely closed. You can't go into the store because they're non-essential. But they have...
And those all around, and just to clarify, that's everywhere in the country right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, pretty much everybody's...
And with Diamond being shut, man, it's... I've never thought it's... When I got into this business 30 years ago, because selling Batman 428s made me more money than a paper route.
Yeah, for me, it was honestly probably my biggest score ever was Ultimate Spider-Man Niagara Falls edition. I went up to Niagara Falls and walked into the Marvel thing, that the Marvel place that they had set up in Niagara Falls, and I said, how many copies of this book do you have? It was selling for $80 on eBay. And they said, oh, we've got about 200. I said, oh, really? How much are they? And they were like, they're $225. And we're talking $225 Canadian. The exchange rate was really good. I said, okay, I'll take them. And she pulled out one. I said, no, I'll take all of them. And she's like, seriously? I was like, yeah, just, box them up. I'll take them. She rang them all up and gave me the box. And I was selling them for $80 a pop. I paid back what I had spent pretty much right away that weekend while I was in Niagara Falls. But then turned around and sold the remaining.
Did Mrs. Hammock put you in a barrel at that point, dude?
What's that?
Did Mrs. Hammock put you in a barrel and make you go over the falls after that?
No, she wasn't Mrs. Hammock at that time, but she thought I was insane. I said, no, you got to trust me on this, because she hadn't seen me doing like the flips and that kind of stuff before. But I mean, I paid off not only the purchase, but the trip, the hotel, the plane flight, all that stuff. I went up with like a backpack with clothing in it and an empty suitcase full of bags and boards. And I went home with a suitcase full of comic books. And, I ended up, I had them on eBay. I was selling them. And then a big company, I won't mention their name.
I know who they are. I won't mention their name either, because I need to see if their connection's still going on.
So they sent me an email and said, hey, what do you want for them all? They said, will you take $50 a book? I said, sold. And I mean, I took $2.25 Canadian, turned it into $50 bills, and just happy as a clam.
I wanted to say something, and this will be in the hidden gems I sent to you the other day.
Go ahead, man.
Everyone was saying that this is the death of the comic book industry.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You can edit this part out. Shit. Just please. We went through 9/11, Sandy, Katrina. This industry was built during the Depression and World War II, for crying out loud. We've gone through Marlow bankruptcies and Iraq wars, the Gulf War back in '90, which has a great thing I mentioned in the Mad magazine that's in the Hidden Gems, which you guys can read it when Tony puts it up.
I'll have it up this week, probably this weekend.
So come on, this is a time when we should be helping each other, not and making people laugh and alleviate theories, not add to them like idiots.
Well, there's a lot of things that people are doing that I think are really good, and I've been trying to, spotlight things on Comics Heating Up. I mean, there's still Kickstarters going on. There's still indie comics that you can buy directly from the publishers. There's online comic conventions that are happening. I know Collector's Corner on Facebook is doing one. There's all sorts of things that you can do to still support the comic industry. I don't believe that this is the end of the comic industry. I'll come back to that in a second. But we've never had anything quite like this in the past 100 years on American soil. 9/11, yes, it happened. It happened in 3 locations. It didn't shut down, the distribution of comics all over the country. We were on lockdown for a couple of days afterwards because we had no idea really what was going on, if there were going to be continued attacks. Yes, there was an air of fear just like there is now, but
I actually think it's worse now than it was then.
Yeah, it's definitely worse now than it was then. I was a teacher at the time, 9/11. We turned on the TV in the classroom and watched the World Trade Towers fall. It was terrifying. I mean, kids were scared. Kids were crying. My parents were on a trip close to where the plane went down in Pennsylvania, and I was scared, man. I didn't know if they were okay or what the deal was, and
yeah, I remember that morning quite vividly, and it haunts me in my nightmares to this day.
Yeah, I mean, being somebody who lives in the New York area, man, absolutely, I can see how it does.
Especially someone who anything I've done professionally in my life, I've done over in the city. So, and I still have aspirations of setting up licensed shops there when this is said and done with.
Yeah.
In fact, the day before they did the national pandemic, I went into the city that Wednesday before the shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
Of course, my mom came home. She's like, "Yeah, my parents gave me so much crap about that."
Yeah. You had to decontaminate. But in all honesty, I don't think this is the end of the comic book industry. What we will probably see, though, is we'll see a lot of these guys who are newer flippers and newer speculators dropping out. We will probably see shops closing. We will probably see reduced print runs. And we know for a fact that most of the publishers are cutting their lines coming out of this. Like Dynamite, for example, is only going to be publishing their top 5 books. We're going to...
Books. I wonder what that means.
What's that?
What the hell are Dynamite's top 5 books? Red Sonja and everything else?
Red Sonja, Vampirilla, and a couple of it. I don't remember all 5 of them.
Yeah, it's like outside of Red Sonja and Vampirilla, can you name anything else?
But I do think we're going to see a comic book recession where values go down on some books. And honestly, my wife came to me the other day. And speaking of the smaller print runs, we're going to see some of the smallest print run on comics coming out of this because shops are cutting their orders. Shops will be closing. We're going to see some of the smallest print runs on comic books coming out.
Since the late 90s.
Yeah, that we've ever seen. Like I was saying, my wife was saying, if you start seeing books that of value that will rebound, your Hulk 181s, your Avengers ones, your Daredevil ones, your Green Lantern one, your key issues going down in value, and all these new books that are coming out that are going to have tiny print runs, grab them. She was like, you've got the money, just grab them. Set them away for later, because we know we're eventually going to rebound. It's not going to happen right away,
Yeah.
But we are going to rebound. But, and this is
the only thing that scares me a little bit, and this is as a retailer side, the lack of new books, I think, is going to kill momentum for things that were hot right now, like your punchlines.
Well, so Punchline's still selling well. If you look at cover price...
I would look at cover price if they had an accessible website.
I'm sorry. Well, Batman 89 is still up there. Batman 90 is still up there.
Batman 91, which I just got my Sears of the Post office not working was the other day when I got my little package to mycomicshop.com.
Yeah, Batman 412, which I think is bad spec. That's a book that people were suggesting, that mime cover. I've got probably 3 or 4
copies. It's not going to be Punchline. Didn't people learn from Batman 38 with Matthew Warner?
I know it's not. I mean... And honestly,
don't people listen to Tanya when he talks? I
know. I've got 3 or 4 copies of this somewhere down here in the basement that I really need to dig out and list because they're hot right now. Nightwing 70, Year of the Villain 3, Hello Risen 3. Those are all top books.
Don't forget, I still think the sleeper of all those is Hello Risen number 4.
Yeah, well, Hello Risen number 4 is selling well, so I got my delivery of comics, and I've got 2 copies sitting in that bag, but... We're taking every precaution we can, and I took the comics out of the bag, threw away the bag, and I'm letting the comics quarantine for 48 hours, because you can't Lysol comics, unfortunately.
Oh, that's it, because I opened the box up outside, but I did not take stuff out of the bag and board.
Well, the bag and board are more likely the ones that are, contaminated, sadly. But, it's crazy times. I can't touch my comics for 48 hours, so I want to list some of these books that I just got in, but I can't. But let's...
Hey, can I just say your blessing real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
You can still list stuff on eBay. I can't even we work with my site assistant at the moment because she's in New York, I'm in Jersey, and I don't want to use stock photos.
But let's talk about a book that really bugs me, and I know it bugs you.
Spectacular Spider-Man 176.
Yeah, the first appearance of Corona. Now, my personal feelings on this, it's twofold. One, I think it's tacky. It has nothing to do with what's going on. And they tried to do... I saw a Green Lantern issue that had some kind of Corona-related thing that people were trying to, hey, here's Corona in comics. I personally want nothing to do with it. I think it's bad karma. For me... I'm superstitious, a cowardly superstitious lot, as Batman would say, but I won't touch it. I think it's extremely tacky. Plus, there's no spec value in it.
First of all, since, where this originated is hell on earth and a plague on the comic book community. Hey, Rich Johnson, how you doing? You remember me, one of your ex-employees, Blind Adam? Anyone who can take speculation tips on what to buy back issues from Bleeding Cool deserves to lose their shirt to begin with.
I've got a history with Bleeding Cool as well. All you have to do is Google my name and Bleeding Cool, and you'll see articles I've written for him in the past. And, and there's good reason that I don't write for him anymore. I'd rather do my own thing, but this, hey guys, look at this, first appearance of Corona.
And the way they did it, they actually sensationalized it, and now, because New York City, my home, it's someone who has the ability to make people sick, being a supervillain. Yay!
Yeah.
I don't think it's the right time for that.
I don't. I think it's very poor timing. I guess I've always been a speculator with a conscience. I will make a buck where I can make a buck. I'm not touching this one, man. I'm not touching this one because I like I said, I think it's bad karma. And it's simple as that. This is one book that I'm not going to hunt out and try to flip. And I probably have a copy of it. I'm not going to lie.
I know I have copies in a box somewhere in my warehouse. I just, be like, this is what you want to spend $20 on, really?
Yeah. Now, personally... As opposed to, man, it's just so distasteful to me. I'm sorry. And I'm not blaming anybody for selling it or buying it or whatever. Don't get me wrong. It's just not for me. It's just not for me. And
like I said, I'm not going to turn around. If I had copies, I'd be selling them because I'm not turning them money.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why keycollector.com. Type in Blind Adam, get yourself a 1 week subscription, I think.
You can also type in Chew 20, was it Chew 2020, Chew 20, something like that. Try both of them. So, one book I want to talk about tonight. Let's just spotlight a book that I personally think is cool. I know I have a copy somewhere, but I want to get another copy. I want to get a nice 9.8 copy of it. It's Incredible Hulk 418. It's the Marlow Rick Jones wedding. It has nothing to do with the Immortal Hulk or anything like that. This is, to me, is one of the coolest books, and I'll tell you why. So, at the wedding, you've got Cap in a tuxedo wearing his mask still, the Hulk in a tuxedo, you got all the Avengers in tuxedos and all. And there's a surprise guest at the wedding. Now, Peter David, the writer, is actually drawn in as the minister who's doing the wedding. So that's not the cool part. It was a nice touch that they did to have him as the minister. But the cool part, the thing that really blows me away on this comic, is Death of the Endless. Vertigo, Sandman. Death makes an appearance in the comic.
Amazing. And I know you told me about this privately, and I just left it alone because I knew it was your thing, and I knew that you would drop the dime on it eventually.
So Death of the Endless comes up and hands Marlow a present. And it's a box, and inside of it is a silver brush. And so, if you think about it, it's a brush with death. Just cool visual, concept. But the story behind this is that Peter David went to Neil Gaiman and said, hey, can I use death in a comic book? And, Neil Gaiman's like, oh yeah, you can use him in the Incredible Hulk, but you need to get permission from the company. So he approaches Paul Levitz from DC, and Paul said, look, you can absolutely use her, but you just can't show the ankh. So the necklace that she traditionally wears is like down in her shirt. So you can't see it, but you can see the chain and see the top of it. But it's her, it's the black outfit, it's the pale skin, the black hair, and it's just such a cool cameo. Now, I think, and a lot of people are pushing for this, as a way to bring comics back coming out of this pandemic and out of the crisis that we're currently in, there's a lot of people pushing for a big multi-publisher crossover.
And that's what both of my, especially Mint was telling me the other day.
Yeah.
Everyone wants a Marvel DC crossover.
So, well, I would like to see it, man. I mean, as many, I would like to see Batman, SpiderMan, Spawn, just bring in everybody in this big jam comic the best way you can to save.
That would be amazing. I would, if every publisher, if they would do what they did right after 9/11 with those tribute books.
Yep.
Those 9/11 graphic novels they put out, that would be amazing.
Yeah. And I think, that would sell gangbusters. Not to mention, because not only is it a way to, support the publishers, support the stores, more importantly, support the creators, support the publishers. But, man, it would be like a feel-good, once-in-a-lifetime, just mega jam, throw in Vampirella, throw in, just every character that you can think of, fighting together for something.
Give it that old. You can hear him because we're in the same age bracket. Cartoon at last Olympics, Joe. Give it that type of vibe.
Yeah. It could absolutely be teams of heroes. It could be something as silly as the Laugh Olympics. It could be what was that race one?
Wacky Races?
Yeah, Wacky Racers, man. They could do so many different things. The teams have to get here first to do whatever. And it would be epic, and people would buy it, and people would love it. And it would be...
People would eat it. People would eat it up.
Yeah. And they can make it
uplifting. Do as many variants as you want. Don't eat the money from this... let stored variants be stored variants, and let them be stored variants. Make them great again.
Yeah. Well, and that's something we haven't talked about. The shops that pretty much make their living off store variants with nothing shipping, they've got all these pre-orders on comics that were supposed to come out over the next couple of weeks being delayed I mean,
That hurts.
and people getting... So I've talked to a couple of friends of mine who are doing Kickstarters for comics, and they've had people back out because of the current financial crisis. So I could imagine people who have placed pre-orders, even though they say, hey, there's no refunds, doing chargebacks or other things that could potentially damage these online retailers. Now, I know there's people who would love to see the death of retailer variants, but it's a market. It's part of the overall market.
I've never had a problem with it, both as a retailer and as a fan. I was like, hey, what happened to just don't with your wallet? If you don't like them, don't buy them.
Well,
that?
That's what I feel like. I don't buy a lot of retailer variants. I do buy some. If the art is something I like, I'm gonna buy it. So I bought the Robert Hack cover for Betty Veronica. Red Sun. Oh my god, the cover this week was fantastic. I'll flash it up on the screen. But it was a really cool retro sci-fi magazine looking cover. I don't read the series.
Who put that out?
I'm sure Dynamite, but it's what is his name? Robert Hack.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic cover. I had to have one. And I don't read the series. I don't care about the series. I do pick up some of the Vampy covers just because I'm an old school Vampy collector from going back to the Warren days. But, whatever. So,
hey man, I think the last Star variant I bought was probably one of the Rick and Mortys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It may have been it was the Rick and Morty Dungeons and Dragons Chromium cover. Just because I'm a Dungeons and Dragons nerd and I love Rick and Morty.
Well, so I'm going to go ahead and close it out here, but I want to talk about eBay sales. And eBay sales actually seem to be doing pretty well right now in comic books. I think people are looking for bargains, but they're, people who have the cash to buy the books. I think people will be dumping comics soon, trying to sell off things, because if they're not working, they're going to have to sell something to make money. And comics make money. And they're probably going to be willing to take less because, in times of dire needs, you're willing to accept less for the books than you would have otherwise, knowing full value what they are, but trying to, to punch the sale. The one thing that I'm really surprised about right now is that eBay hasn't done, and I think this is a way to help the economy and the market, eBay hasn't done free listings. So normally every couple of months they'll give me 500 free listings.
Yeah, I haven't gotten mine yet either.
No, so I haven't seen any. I mean, I would like to see eBay do a moratorium on listing fees for a week. Now, that doesn't mean final value fees aren't going to be charged, because you still have to pay.
They'll still get their $2.22.
Yeah, absolutely. But you do away with the initial listing fee, the 5 cents or whatever, 25 cents, depending on whatever you're doing. Do away with those. Encourage people to sell on your platform. Encourage money to go into the economy. And I think that could help not only comic sales, because right now there's nothing new to buy. People should focus on, rarer back issues or, things to read. I've got a bunch of those DC Prestige comics, the ones that came out recently, the thicker bound $4.95 ones, I paid 50 cents a piece for. I'm willing to sell these, cheap in order to give people something to read. I'm not looking to...
And if you have someone in your community who's disabled and a comic book fan, people who are stuck at home, who, it may be difficult and they're a comic book fan, hook them up a little bit.
Yeah.
You just hey, here's a motion comic you might like.
Yeah.
During this time. No, seriously, it's been affecting me, hitting me really hard emotionally, because, even the slightest things I would take for granted, like being able to have someone help me put something on eBay.
Yeah.
Is not there right now.
Right.
So whatever we could do as a comic, hey, don't worry, Comic Com, I'll pay you 50 cents, but whatever we could do to spread comic karma around, let's do it. Let's help each other as a community and a family and a brotherhood.
Yeah. So let me ask you one last thing, and so AWA Studios is a new comic company that just launched a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. They put out The Resistance, which was their linchpin book, and Hotel, with double L's, emphasizing the hell part. I don't know, 5 other comics or whatever. So they launched in the middle of everything being shut down. Worst time to possibly start a new comic company. And I felt horrible because, they've got one book, and they've been doing the Upstart Nows, which are decent. I mean, $5, you get like 3 issues, fully, full issues in black and white. More of a manga phone book kind of book. But now they're releasing the regular full color issues. And then this happens. And one of the things they've done is they've released The Resistance free digitally. And I think that's pretty cool. They're launching a player so that they can put some of their comics out digitally. Now, I know Boom Studios has said they're not doing digital comics. They're not going to release these comics that would have been going to the shops over the next couple of weeks digitally. We haven't heard a lot from Marvel or DC. Marvel has basically said that they're going to give massive discounts on books and that they're going to delay the time in which Diamond has to pay their invoices, so that's going to give comic shops more time to pay their invoices. But we've heard nothing from DC whatsoever.
DC's been quiet, scarily quiet during this whole thing.
Yes, absolutely. But do you think there's a possibility, with what people have been saying, that this is the end of print comics and all that, do you think we're going to see more digital comic releases coming out over the next few weeks on books that would have been shipped to the stores?
Maybe. I think it might give a short-term fix,
but a short-term fix.
I think everyone is looking for something right now.
That's only a short-term fix for the publisher.
It's putting a Band-Aid on a cut. It's putting a